Okay, we will call this meeting of the Gilbert Governing Board to order. It is Tuesday, June 23rd. This is a regularly scheduled board meeting. Before we begin our regular agenda, there is a need for an executive session. Executive session is listed under item number 1.01. The Governing Board may convene an executive session pursuant to ARS Section 38-431.03 and 1 for discussion of superintendent's evaluation and pay for performance. Board members, what's your pleasure? Is there a motion?
Dr. Santa Cruz, I move that we move to executive session as outlined on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti. Is there any discussion? If not, then we will vote. All those in favor of moving to executive session, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. We will move to executive session and convene thereafter. Okay. Here we go. Here we go, folks. All right, we will call this governing board meeting together. Again, this is the regular board meeting of June 23rd, 2020. And we will begin our meeting with our call to order, which has just occurred, and 2.2 is a moment of silence. 2.3, Mrs. Humphreys will lead us in the pledge. I would ask that during our moment of silence that we consider Jake Ellingston, student from Highland High School who recently passed away. So we will take our moment of silence. If you would just please rise.
If you'll join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphreys. We will now move to item 2.04. Ms. Wilson, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Reed Carr,
Here?
Ms. Laurie Wood,
Here.
Dr. Charles Santa Cruz,
Here?
Ms. Shula Ujedi, here, Ms. Jill Humphreys.
Here.
Mr. President, all board members are present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Item 2.05 is a call for a public hearing pursuant to ARS 15905. We will move to that portion. I'm not sure that we need a motion for that. So, Dr. McCord, go ahead. Dr. McCord?
My apologies. Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. We're on 3.01?
3.01 public hearing.
All right. Later. What we have for you tonight is something that Ms. Betts and her Business Services Department have been working extremely hard on for the last several months, and that is our 2021 budget proposal, and tonight she'd like to present that to you.
Good evening.
Go-
governing-
Go ahead, Ms. Betts, sorry.
Good evening, governing board members. I'm Dr. McCord. Would like to go right into the presentation, so if you could pull it up for me when I pull that up. Okay? So based upon the proposed budget presentation that we made 2 weeks ago, we made just some tiny little modifications to the adopted budget presentation, and this has been posted since Friday. In addition, it's largely the same as the proposed budget presentation back 2 weeks ago and had been posted. So for any interested community members, it's been out there for them to review, in addition to, of course, the actual budget, the budget worksheets. Sorry. So to move into the presentation, can you put it on presentation mode, Michael? Yes, I'm going. Thanks. Thank you. So to begin, we wanted to make sure that the public and you all knew the parameters surrounding the development of the budget. We will go through the details of the adopted maintenance and operations budget, as well as the details of the fiscal year 2021 adopted unrestricted capital budget, the fiscal year 2021 other fund budgets that are notable. Finally, some 2021 other adopted budget risks and opportunities. Move the mic closer. Is this better? Okay, thank you. And then of course, the estimated tax rates going into fiscal year 2021. So the adopted budget introduction, you've seen this slide numerous times. The budget is fully aligned to the strategic plan as well as the commitments made during the override election, which was passed in November of 2019. Some of the details of some of these and the specific line item in the strategic operating plan: class size reductions related to student success, social emotional supports, safe and supportive schools. That also aligns with the commitment we made in the November 2019 election. Compensation increases, employee excellence, as well as student success. Special area coordinator addition, student success, and then finally unrestricted capital, the commitment that we are basing our budget on a zero-based budgeting process. The idea with on unrestricted capital is that you spend it on one-time needs, and that is related to financial and operational efficiency. So the maintenance and operations budget capacity, you've seen all of this numerous times. I'm not going to go through all of it. The one notable thing I would like to share is that we did assume a 400 student loss as we were building our budget. And then the other notable item is the classroom site fund. We were expecting, pursuant to the governor's proposal, to see an increase in classroom site fund monies that would help offset the increase to teacher salaries. However, again, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the loss of state sales tax revenues, the decision was made to actually decrease the classroom site fund funding by $9 per weighted student when we expected a $40 per student increase. So these are the comparison of the budget parameters. So you can see the unweighted ADM with AOI. You can see our revised number 2 is just over 33,000 students. And you can see that the 21 adopted is less than that at 32,800. The total weighted count then you can see is directly related to that ADM. The base level amount, that is the increase that was approved by the state legislature. The teacher experience index also was calculated. Originally we expected it to be the same, but it actually dropped a little bit. Transportation revenue control limit is exactly the same as it was in the prior year. And then finally that classroom site fund, $434 per weighted ADM in revised number 2 down to $425 for the new adopted budget for 2021.
Mrs. Betts, just one question. On our teacher experience index, is that lower because we've had some retirees and so our maybe our teacher experience is not as high as the previous year? I mean, there is a rollover.
Right, that's the presumption that we did lose a number of teachers that had been here for many, many, many years.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Betts, so tell me the adopted unweighted ADM. We adopted 32,801.
We hope that the board will adopt the budget tonight
With that?
32,801.
And so is that consistent with the
400 students.
400 student
Yes,
loss? Okay,
loss.
okay. And we're hoping that doesn't happen,
We're hoping it does not.
but we're just trying to be conservative in our budgets so that we can be prepared.
Correct. And then I wanted to remind everyone that AOI is Arizona Online Instruction, and the WTD is the weighted student counts. Okay.
And Ms. Betts, just to clarify Ms. Wood's question, this is a result of the current year funding approach. So we're adopting a conservative approach. We know that just as we have done this year, we will adjust and adopt a revised budget based on the actual count at some future point.
That's correct. We have adopted a policy or practice that we will revise our budget at least by January, if we're not required to revise it by December, and then always do a final revised budget in the May timeframe each year. Okay? Comparison now of M&O budget capacity. So you can see the 20 revised number 2, the total budget capacity is just over $239 million. And you can see that we're recommending adoption at a level of $258.7 million. So again, keeping the $19.4 million increase. We did expect the $19.4 million in the projection back in the April timeframe. There have been moving parts in and out, up and down from all of the parameters. It just so happens that it stayed the same at about a $19.4 million increase. So the adopted maintenance and operations budget spend increases. So these are non-discretionary increases. We have no control over whether these happen or not, and we are obligated to budget for them. Arizona State retirement, medical insurance premium, minimum wage increase, special education increases, and then the special area coordinator, and finally the decrease of FTE due to 400 less students. So we are anticipating a loss of about 15 FTE. I'd like to spend a little bit of time on that. That's just the savings associated with the loss in FTE. When you make a recommendation or a projection that you're going to lose 400 students, they don't come in nice little 25 student buckets. And so we can't anticipate that we would see the same number of teachers to fill in the gap. So the 400 student loss, about $500,000, $550,000 per 100. So that's over a $2 million loss in revenue if we had these students. I wanted to make that clear. Any other questions on the non-discretionary?
Just always want to make it clear too that that's the loss of FTE. That's just a normal, those teachers who leave for different reasons. It's not like we're going to look to.
That's correct. We have enough natural turnover each summer, retirees and separations, that will easily bridge that gap. In general, I've only been here for a couple of years, but we've lost between 50 and 60 students to separation or retirement.
Teachers.
Teachers, thank you. Okay. The other dollars associated with this plan are the M&O override commitments, so the class size reduction allocation of $2 million, the social emotional supports, that included adding social workers. Okay, that'd be great, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Okay, terrific, that's better. Terrific, thank you. So then the retain and attract high quality personnel. So the total is almost $18.1 million. We are expected to receive about $11.6 million from going from a 10% override to a 15% override. So obviously the $6 million or so gap, $5.5 million or so gap is coming out of the other budget parameters associated with our recommended adopted budget for 2021. So the strategic priority, employee excellence. Just a couple of parameters regarding this, that all functions in Gilbert Public Schools contribute to the achievement of our students. All employees, regardless of their role, whether teachers, paraprofessionals, librarians, social workers, contribute to the achievement of the vision. The strategic operating plan employee goal is to retain and attract high-quality employees in all positions in Gilbert Public Schools. And so therefore, compensation increases when possible shall be consistent across all employee groups. So this is how we divvied up the extra monies across the various job classes. So you can see the teachers at the top, the 5% pay increase. We did offer and had approved through interest-based bargaining team process the buyback of 2 medical days. So we added $200 on the base of every teacher returning, and then we put the 5% pay increase on top of that. Support staff, increases to new grade minimum. Again, a reminder that we went through a significant compensation study with 9 other school districts in the Phoenix area. That resulted in some recommendations that we made regarding changing our grades to new grade minimums to improve competitiveness. In addition, as you know, we had compressions associated with the minimum wage increases, and so we also adopted equity adjustments and then 4% on the base across the board for everybody. Overall salary increase would be a minimum of 5% across this group of employees. And then finally, administration and other professionals increases to a new minimum that mostly impacted our social workers, and then plus 4% on the base, but again, an overall salary increase of a minimum of 5%. So we achieved our goal of having compensation be more equitable across all employee groups. So balancing the budget, so we have $19.4 million of new funds available to us. You can see all of the expenditure increases that are going against that $19.4 million, leaving us a fully balanced budget of $0. Before I move on, are there any questions regarding that?
I did want to mention the hard work that was put in on the new salary schedule, and that moving people up from the minimum wage increase and making sure that people were appropriately compensated for their responsibilities. And that was a lot of work, so thank you very much, and I really appreciate the hard work that was done on that.
Yeah, please know that OTM staff played a huge, significant role in that effort.
Yes, they did. And they had a great presentation.
That's right. Okay, average teacher salary, as you know, since Governor Ducey proposed is 20% by 2020, we are required to put this table on the front page of our adopted budget. So the average salary of all teachers employed in 2021, the budget year, is a calculated figure based upon the 5% increase that we just spoke about. The $52,446, which is in the current year, the 2020 year, which is now the prior year, was $52,446. I'd like to stop right there to indicate that the $52,446 is not what was adopted going into the fiscal year 2020 budget. Remember that we always calculate the average salary in the spring prior to the new year, prior to separations and retirements that occurred during the summer. So that $52,446 represents the actual average salary as of the spring of the current year. So the percentage increase is 5%. The average salary of all teachers employed in fiscal year 2018 is $46,761. Just doing the calculation, 54,884 minus 46,761 results in a calculated percentage increase in average teacher salary since 2018 of 17.4%. The total percent salary increase, however, with this governing body has been a total of 18.5% each year, always trying to compensate the teachers at a level commensurate with what the governor expected. A couple of things there, as you know, through the interest-based bargaining team process, all the employee groups came together, and teachers were very vocal about not taking the full 5% in every year and not taking the full 10%. And so spreading out the dollars in a more equitable way has always been paramount to their work. So the 18.5% total was definitely approved, and the recommendation came out of the interest-based bargaining team. In addition, we have said this many times, that our calculation for teacher, or our definition of teacher, is very different than that of the governor's. The governor was looking at classroom teachers. We have included our teacher, our technology integration educators. We've included our librarians, our counselors, as well as our academic coaches and our classroom teachers in our definition of teacher. Any questions on that before I move to the next slide? Great.
Just a comment, and I'd like to ask Mr. Carr if he would be so kind as to, he eloquently spoke to that issue as to why the 2020 issue isn't front and center here at our work study session. Could you clarify that as you presented it to us? It was related to the average teacher salary.
Are we talking about the change of
Right.
teacher
Correct.
seniority?
Correct.
So,
Correct.
okay, just making sure I'm recalling exactly what you were looking for. As we lose a senior teacher who is higher on the pay scale, and their higher pay gets removed from that average, and they're typically replaced with the first year or relatively new teacher who's lower on the pay scale, your average comes down. So even though we are increasing the salary commensurate with the governor's plan and is approved here, just because of the experience levels, you're going to see that number come down. And other districts are seeing a similar type thing. That's not unique to us, but we want the public to understand that. It's important that they understand we are using those dollars as intended.
Thank you, Mr. Carr, appreciate that. Ms. Beth, please continue.
So remember that the percent increase awarded for teachers, so each year initially it was 9% going into the 18-19 school year. It was 4.5% going into the 19-20 school year, and going into the 20-21 school year, it's 5%. So that represents the 18.5%. So what we did here is we looked at an elementary teacher A, high school teacher A, and junior high teacher A, and we looked at their actual salary increases year over year. And you can see, and it's the difference, the reason why in 19 you don't see the full 9% is because of the fact that we put the 9% on the maintenance and operations portion, not on the classroom site fund portion. But we're looking at total salary when we did that calculation. But you can see the 4.5% in 2020, and the fiscal year 2021, 5.4%, 5%, a little bit more, because that represents both the accumulation of the pay increase on top of increased salary on a percentage basis, as well as the additional $200 per teacher on the base. So you can see the overall percent increase on each of these example teachers that were here back when we first started and are still here in 2021, that overall their average increased by 18.7%, a little bit higher than the 18.5%, which you should expect. Okay? We just thought it was important to give an example to confirm or illustrate Mr. Carr's statements. Okay? Okay, so to move forward, the additionally on the front cover page, it does give us a comment box, and we have made the comments very clear, talking about the turnover of teachers and how the average salary is calculated and why it's changed year over year. So, fiscal year 2021 adopted unrestricted capital budget. So again, this is the district additional assistance formula. So the revised number 2 showed a total formula of $15.4 million, a little bit under $15.4 million. And then the 2021 projected a little bit more than $15.4 million. And you can see that the adopted is very comparable to that. The reason for the increase is because we had more students. So the district additional assistance is based upon your prior year ADM, different than the maintenance and operations, which is based upon your current year ADM. So we saw an increase there. And then the district additional assistance, you can see the adjustment and the projected as well as the adopted. So that was one of the mitigation strategies that the legislature passed in late April, early May due to the COVID pandemic. Initially, the governor had proposed that that adjustment would go away altogether. But you can see that we still have a reduction of $2.5 million. And then there's the textbook allocations, budget balance carry forward, some other things. So our budget capacity, we are expecting to go over, to be higher than 2020 by $2.8 million. And again, as I indicated earlier, that this, the unrestricted capital will be allocated out based upon a zero-based budgeting process to make sure that each year we're funding the need, and then in the subsequent year, a different need is funded appropriately. So these are the non-discretionary unrestricted capital expenditures. Remember that assessment, as well as curriculum, as well as all of our district-wide software solutions, licensing, et cetera, all come out of this unrestricted capital budget, which formerly was a soft capital budget, which would have included all those things. You can see that you approved the assessment platform and the ongoing assessment cost, a $30,000 increase. You approved that this spring, as well as the increase to Global Academy in response to the expectation that we may need to go online more going into 2021. So we needed to expand the curriculum, the online curriculum, to our K-5 students. And then transportation, note the decrease of $1.5 million. As you all know, you approved the new routing software to be implemented in transportation, as well as the remodeling of transportation due to the combination of the Power Base facility into the Gilbert base. So those obviously are one-time costs that will not need to be repeated. So you can see the decrease there. And then finally, general instructional materials that are ongoing across the school system. So a total of $8.5 million. That leaves us about $6.6 million available for prioritization, and we will share those details with you once we've have them determined. We're holding off a little bit as we don't know how the school year is going to start. Want to make sure that we have available resources to help mitigate any potential increased loss in students. Any questions on any of that on the unrestricted capital? Okay. So other funds, we talked about classroom site fund at length. I'd like to move to instructional improvement. Note that we have a budget of $3.1 million, which is an increase. So we have done, due to the cash reconciliation, know how much cash we've carried over. But we were very conservative in our new revenues going into 2021. The Instructional Improvement Fund is totally funded by Native American gaming revenues, and knowing that all of those venues were shut down for a period of 3 to 4 months due to the pandemic, we were expecting a decrease in the revenues. Title I, $3.5 million, again, due to the CARES Act, we're able to fully carry over all of our title funds, which we did not expect initially. And then finally, the bond fund, you approved a resolution last board meeting to prepare for a bond sale to close in late July, early August, and that's also included in this budget. So risks and opportunities, again, assumes a loss of 400 students. We assumed a loss of 400 students going into 2020, but we actually gained over 100 more. So we actually gained 540 students, which gave us a swing to the positive of 140 students. We don't know how that's going to happen. We don't know how many of our students are going to go online, which could also result in decreases in ADM. Vacancy savings nor turnover savings are identified. So vacancy savings is when you have a budgeted position and you can never fill it. So those monies go into the bottom line as budget balance carry forward. Turnover savings are what Mr. Carr described, where you have a $65,000 a year teacher be replaced by a $45,000 a year teacher. And then other than increased curriculum costs associated with the expansion of Global Academy, increases in costs are being identified. We haven't quite completed that. That will be shared with you next week regarding the additional cleaning supplies and devices, as well as the protective personal equipment, the PP&E, such as masks, transparent screens, and gloves needed throughout the school system. And then finally, based upon all of this, our estimated fiscal year 2021 tax rate. So remember that we set the tax rate in early August, and we work on this with the county, the school superintendent's office in early to mid-July to establish that. So this is an estimate, again, based upon the bond sale and any additional debt service needed in both January and in July. This is what we are estimating at this point. So the fiscal year 2020 estimated tax rate was a total of 5.9. The November 2019 election pamphlet shared with the community a total potential of 6.46, about 56 cents more per $100 of assessed valuation. Based upon looking at our plan for the bond sale, et cetera, the estimate is that our tax rate will be $6.25, about 21 cents less than anticipated in the bond override pamphlet in November of 2019. I did have that estimate confirmed by our financial advisor, And this tax rate will be the worst case. So if anything, it could improve. It will not go up.
And just to clarify, we don't actually set the rate, we set the levy and amount. We
That's
combine
correct.
that with the assessor who sets the net assessed value within our property.
That's correct.
That creates this rate. We look at that as we try to establish these numbers, but we don't actually set the rate.
That's correct. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay, great. And then finally, just some general questions, and I am remiss because I did have Ms. Jackie Mattinen join me tonight, and she's right behind me. So she's here to help me answer any detailed questions that I may not know. So with that.
Thank you, Ms. Betts, and welcome, Ms. Mattinen. I did see you out there, so thank you very much. Board members, any additional questions? Before we move any further, I'd like to correct my error, and even though we've gone through the public hearing, item 2.05 does call for a motion to open the public hearing, and just for the record, I would like for a motion on the public hearing and a second.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ujetti. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Any discussion? Moving backwards here, and I do apologize.
So Dr. Santa Cruz, you're not going to make me do that presentation again, are you?
Hang on, since Ms. Mattinen just arrived, we'll have you do it again. No, we will not.
Dr.
Humphries?
Santa Cruz, I did have a few comments. I really appreciate the work that's gone into it. School finance is very complicated. We have all kinds of buckets where our money comes from, and we have all kinds of statutes about how we can spend that money. And it's something we have to keep careful track of so that we can educate our students well. And I really appreciate all the time and effort put into the presentation, because I think you guys have tried to make it as clear as possible. And after a few go-rounds, it will get clearer to people. But it is very complex, and you've made it as clean and as careful and clarified things as well as you could. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Before any additional commentary, let's take a vote. All those in favor of the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say same. Motion carries. Additional commentary regarding questions on the presentation before we move to item 3.02, which is an opening for members of the public to speak if they wish. And we do have one member of the public who is asked to speak. So we are at item 3.02, and we have comment from Mr. Jordan Ray. Okay, so it was not on the budget. We will move to item 3.03, adjournment of the public hearing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ujetti. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of closing public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say same. Motion carries 5-0. And we reconvene the regular board meeting.
I move
Do I
that,
have a motion to reconvene 4.01?
I move that we reconvene the regular board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Ujetti. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Questions, discussions? None? All those in favor of reconvening the board meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Item 5.01 is the approval of this evening's agenda for the regular board meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti. Any discussion?
Dr. Santa Cruz, may
Yeah.
I suggest, since we do have members of the public here, that maybe we move that request to speak and allow them to speak if they're not on specific items before the superintendent's report in case they would like to leave?
So ordered, thank you. We will do that. Let's take a vote on approving the agenda as suggested by Mr. Carr. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. We are into the agenda. We have members of the public who are desiring to speak, and then we will move to agenda items and the superintendent's report. So we will begin with the recorded message with Ms. Woods, at Ms. Woods' request.
The board may make an open call to the public during a public meeting, subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions to allow individuals to address the public body on an issue within the jurisdiction of the public body. At the conclusion of the open call to the public, individual board members may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the board, may ask the staff to review a matter, or may ask a matter to be put on a future agenda. However, members of the board shall not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during the open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. During the open call, the board requests that speakers refrain from voicing complaints against school personnel or any person connected with the district, as it may impact due process rights. Policy KE, KEB, and KED are provided by the board for disposition of legitimate complaints, including those involving individuals. Forms required for use of these policies can be obtained from the Gilbert Public Schools website.
We have two requests to speak. First will be Mr. Joe Gusick. Welcome, Mr. Gusick. Good to see you.
Board President, fellow board members, Superintendent McCord, all GPS staff, parents, taxpayers, and last but not least, students. As I always tell you, I'm Joe Gusick, and it's nice to be able to say once again, I'm the lovable, slightly annoying American citizen. I'm the Education Lorax. I first wanted to say congratulations. I finally had a chance to come to a board meeting this year to congratulate Mr. Santa Cruz for being our board president. I thank the rest of the board members for honoring a long tradition before that of rotating the power from year to year. I hope to never see a day where another board member has to, or anybody feels that they ever have to serve more than 1 year. I believe we should always have talent on our board, and it should be representative of all five, and those five should share the power of being, or the privilege of being, the president and the clerk. Second, I thank you for allowing us to speak this evening. I thank you for buying me chairs. They're very comfy. I appreciate that. The reason I did come tonight is I know everybody doesn't really like to wear a mask. My grandfather was a coal miner, and he didn't really like to wear a bandana dunked in water. But he did it because there wasn't anything else. He did get black lung eventually, but he didn't get it as badly as everybody else. There's a story there that if we do just a little bit, we can help each other. Now, obviously, you see the chairs, they're all separated out here, and we're taking great precautions to do the things the right way. Today, we had our highest amount of COVID cases recognized in the state of Arizona since this has occurred. And I just want to say this. I know you have a tough challenge ahead of you, but you also have an opportunity to educate an entire community on self-governance. And in that self-governance, an absolute understanding that yes, they have rights, but they also have responsibilities, not to themselves, but us, and not just to their fellow man and women, but to their country to do the right thing. So I know over the next year you're going to have challenges, and I've seen the news reports from all the different countries struggling with this, with starting a school and stopping a school and doing all those things. What I ask you all to be is compassionate, understanding of each and every single individual, educator, child, parent, community member, and be an education system within an education system. The system that gives them total options this given year that are outside of the boundaries of what is normal. Bend and flex, and have the community stay together. That is the true, in my opinion, the opportunity. Because if you encourage people by the example that you're all setting tonight, the whole time this thing has been going on, I've always gone into stores, and even when Governor Ducey said we could take our masks off and all that, I still went into places. So I encourage you to set an example and be flexible and be kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gusick. Next speaker is Mr. Jordan Ray. Welcome, Mr. Ray.
It's a privilege to be here, and it's always good to follow Joe. Mostly because I'm usually a little bit less, I speak less than he does. I served on the council for the last 9 years. I resigned a couple months ago to run for Justice of the Peace, and as such, I can't talk about politics and positions and policies and things like that. But what I can do and what I'm here to do tonight is to just say thank you to each of you for what you guys do. And when I say each of you, I mean board members, I mean our superintendent, staff, administration, etc. This upcoming year, I'll have 2 at Carroll Ray Ranch, I'll have 1 at Highland Junior, and I'll have 2 at Highland High School. I've long said Carroll Ray is my favorite, but now it's tied with Highland as I have the same amount of kids in both of those schools. But as a parent and as a resident, I can't imagine the decisions you guys will be making over the next few months. But I say thank you, and the community supports you and appreciates what you guys do as a board and as administration and as our teachers. So thank you for what you do. Keep up the good work, and we look forward to another successful year with Gilbert Public Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. We'll now move back to item 6, Superintendent's Report, item 6.01. Dr. McCord.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz, governing board members. Welcome to our meeting this evening. As Mr. Ray and Mr. Gusick pointed out a little bit, that we are doing our part, social distancing, and we are trying to be as safe and cautious as we can. And we appreciate the fact that we have the opportunity to let our community talk to us if need be. So again, thank you for that. I want to start off with talking about graduation, the class of 2020. We've already had our virtual graduation. I think I spoke to that at our last meeting. But I'd also like to talk about we also left the door open about having a face-to-face graduation, and we are not going to have a face-to-face graduation for the class of 2020 for a lot of obvious reasons that's going on in our state and in our country. It does pain me to say that, but I believe the best decision is to do that for all that are involved. I would also like to say that there is a possibility for each school to gather their class of 2020 for a celebration at a later date when it's much safer. We don't know when that will be, and we don't want to push that aside. We want to give the class of 2020 an opportunity to get together, but I just wanted to make sure people in the community knew where we were at for graduation for this year. And again, to all of our seniors that did graduate, very proud of you, very proud of your resilience and how you made it through the last quarter of your senior year. Again, very sorry that it didn't end up better for you, but we do appreciate you and your families for making it through. Next, I'd like to talk, and the last thing I'd really like to talk about is just a task force update. This is information that we sent out to our staff and community, but I'd also like to reiterate it here. As we all know, this is an ever-changing and evolving situation, and it's essential that our plan moving forward has a range of options that are flexible in order to meet the needs of our students and families, and to prepare for a range of scenarios and circumstances. To achieve this, there are a number of factors that are informing the work of the task force committee, including but not limited to student success and well-being, recommendations at the federal, state, and local levels from entities including the CDC and Arizona Governor's Office, the Arizona Department of Education roadmap to reopening schools, feedback from employee and parent surveys, and resource limitations and funding parameters. We've created a task force update page on our district website, including communication updates, presentations to the governing board, and FAQ. Please visit this page for ongoing updates during the planning process at www.gilbertschools.net/taskforce. The task force will present the final plan to the governing board on June 30th, 2020. That's next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. We will then communicate the plan with our employees and community, including the launch of an online hub with key information and resources. Our task force will continue to explore all options to ensure that the final plan meets the needs of as many of our students and families as possible and promotes the health and safety of our community. In that light, we'd like to update you and our community on 3 learning options that will be a part of the proposed plan presented on the 30th. Option 1 is full-time, in-person, on-campus learning with precautions in place to minimize the spread of COVID-19. The next option is full-time online learning with GPS Global Academy, utilizing GPS teachers and a fully accredited online platform and curriculum. And the last option is a hybrid option at the elementary and secondary levels, allowing students to learn both on-campus, part-time, and online using the GPS Global Academy. Again, these 3 options will be presented to you next week. And we hope that whatever our students and our staff, what situation they're in come August 5th, we believe that we will have 3 options that are readily available for everyone to be a part of Gilbert Public Schools, because we want to make sure that we maintain the integrity of what we do on a daily basis. And we want to make sure all of our students are educated appropriately. And we want to make sure that we create environments for our staff to be able to work in that is appropriate and that serves their needs. Again, next week we'll be rolling this out, and that concludes my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. We'll now move to item 8. Item 8.01 be a monthly budget report. And 8.02 will be the 2020 revised budget number 2 presentation. I will open that up to Dr. McCord and Ms. Betts. Dr. McCord?
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Governing board members, what we have for you is our monthly budget report presented by Ms. Betts.
Good evening again. We have actually combined the monthly financial report with the revised budget number 2. It's quite unusual that we would revise the final budget for the current year on the same night that we are adopting the new budget for the new year. As you know, this extension was provided by the Department of Education primarily due to wanting to realize the CARES Act funding in the current year. So, we will start with the monthly financial report, which of course informs the final revised budget. We always take a look at this to determine what we're expecting in terms of budget balance carry forward, et cetera. So the May financials do reflect the revised budget number 2. Again, operating budgets, we always take a look at maintenance and operations and unrestricted capital. We did allocate out money in unrestricted capital late this year, so they're catching up. In addition, it's very common for schools to buy in the current year to be prepared for the new fiscal year. So that accounts for the increases in both unrestricted capital and maintenance and operations, or the decrease in available budget balance carry forward. So to get into the detail, you can see the maintenance and operations budget. We're still expecting about $9.6 million in budget balance carry forward. As you know, that's not consistent with the recommendation for the adopted budget. The adopted budget has a higher value. Remember that as we get into July and August, we are unencumbering many of our purchase orders, giving us an opportunity to realize additional budget balance carry forward. And then we always do journal entries to move particular expenditures into other funds to give us an opportunity to actually increase the budget balance carry forward into the 2021 school year. In addition, notice the unrestricted capital outlay. We're still anticipating at this point to have just under $1.1 million, but again, we already know that it's not possible for all of the work and procurement to occur prior to July 1. So many of that will have to roll over as well, also increasing the budget balance carry forward in unrestricted capital. So before I go on, I just wanted to make sure that there's any questions on that. Okay, terrific. This is our federal grants. I just wanted to point this out. You can see that the available balance in Title and IDEA is fairly significant, and so the good news is we'll be able to carry forward that, as I mentioned earlier, into fiscal year 2021, where normally we are limited to how much we're allowed to carry over in those funds. State grants, I wanted to point out instructional improvement. You can see that we've revised the budget number 2 to be $3.1 million, but we're still expecting to have carryover of $2.5 million. Normally, we get about $1.7 million in revenues each year in instructional improvement, but you can see that we've been conservative, so that $2.5 million in carryover plus about $1 million in revenue we're expecting to go into the 2021 school year. And enterprise funds, these are reflective of the pandemic and the loss of revenues in community school the last 3 months of the school year. And then these are other district funds. So in terms of the monthly financial report, that is all I have to share with you on that. Any additional questions?
Ms. Betts, Dr. Santa Cruz, if I
Go
may.
ahead.
Is this typical, the carry forward? You mentioned that in several categories, that we have more carry forward than normal, that we have, a higher carry forward than we anticipated. Can you explain what that's due to?
You bet. So in Title, as an example, we did not have in-person Title summer school. It all went online. So we didn't have the transportation expense associated with picking up students and taking them to school each day. So that was a large contributor. In addition, we open up a blanket purchase order at the beginning of every year for our fuel and transportation. So it's probable that we've over-encumbered because we weren't operating our buses for the last 3 months of the school year. So this is an unusual year. In addition, we're thankful for it because we don't know what's going to happen going into the 2021 school year. Having additional carryover gives us more flexibility to mitigate any additional loss of students, et cetera.
Thanks.
Board members, Mr. Carr?
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. And I would, again, thank Ms. Betts and her staff for these presentations. They have come so far over the last couple of years, and the content, and would just simply add, not only do they mitigate the risk of future year, but it also puts us in a better balanced situation so that when we go out for bonds and we get credit ratings, that was one of the issues a couple of years ago, last time our credit rating was reviewed, is we got a lower credit rating because we did not have any carry forward. So having those reserves, we always want to use the funds we have for the kids that we have. This is not a rainy day fund. It's not an intentional set aside per se, but it is good practical management that serves the taxpayers, both because we will have the funds available to mitigate and because it lowers what we would pay in those bonds in the future.
Other questions, comments, board members? No? Please continue, Ms. Betts.
Okay. So I don't have the next presentation. Michael, can you, I think this is the PDF. Can you put up the presentation for me? There we go. Okay, I'm going to go through this really quick. We've already shared all of this. And then the revised budget number 2. So if you recall, we did share this with you in early May because generally this is supposed to be approved by the 15th. We did want to take advantage of the delay though, and so we're presenting this to you again for the final revised budget, which you have as an action item later tonight. So again, this is the fiscal year 2020 M&O budget revision number 2, the unrestricted capital budget, and then other updates. So again, this should be consistent with what you've seen on the adopted budget presentation. You can see all the changes that have occurred, and you can see the increases between revision number 2 versus adopted way to the right side. So you can see, as I indicated earlier, that the average daily membership increased by 527 students when we were expecting to see a 400 student loss. So that's a swing of 900 students, which is quite remarkable. And you can see the how the weighted student count responds to that increase in ADM. The revenue control limit due to that increased by nearly $3.7 million. We shared already the transportation revenue control limit, the error that had been made in reporting, and we fixed that during this fiscal year. Budget balance carry forward was higher. Again, that's an indicator of what happens when you're in the encumbrance period. The encumbrance period is July and August. We're paying off all the invoices and we're unencumbering purchase orders. So that results in additional budget balance carry forward, that $2.4 million. So you can see that the M&O general budget limit increased by nearly $4.6 million from the adopted for fiscal year 2020. And the unrestricted capital budget limit increased by $1.2 million from the adopted fiscal year 2020. Any questions on that? Okay. Again, we've already talked about this, revenue control limit, budget balance carry forward, the unrestricted capital increase due to updated student counts, and final fiscal year 2019 AFR. The AFR is the annual financial report. Again, that's when we put the actual spend against the budget, and that's when we know for certain what our budget balance carry forward will be. And know that that's not submitted to the Department of Ed until on or before the 15th of October, and normally we do not receive the results of that until late November, accounting for the budget revision either in December or in January. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay, great. Other budget change detail, again, we talked about instructional improvement, the Fund 100, Title I and II. Note that we have actually a decrease. We adopted $6.8 million in title going into the 2020 school year, but only could realize 4.6. The reason for that change is we generally adopt what we had adopted the year prior. But obviously we did not have the opportunity to carry forward that much money in title. Again, we have an opportunity to be able to realize all of that carry forward in title funds going into the 2021 school year. We do note that we have the ESSER dollars, that's the CARES Act, the $2.361 million, that is our allocation. Recall that we indicated we probably will spend about $500,000 in the current year out of the CARES Act money, leaving about $1.8 million to be spent in the 2021 school year. Auxiliary operations, this is notable, that $1.8 million decline due to the fact that we did not have athletic and field trip activities during the spring, and much of that money had to be refunded to all of our parents and their students. So that accounts for the drop of the $1.8 million. And then indirect, again, this is due to the annual financial report, and as well as the debt service. We had additional carryover in the debt service fund that resulted in that almost $2 million increase in the debt service fund. Any questions on any of that?
Dr. Santa Cruz? if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Burr.
Ms. Betts, you highlighted the refund of athletic fees in the auxiliary operations there. can you just clarify, because I know we received a number of questions, that represents only the student athletic fees, not anything that was contributed to teams through the tax credits, correct?
That's correct. Because of the nature of the tax credit, we are not at all able to refund tax credit dollars. However, we work very hard at moving that tax credit donation to a fund that the parent wishes it to be in for the subsequent year for their student. So as an example, if a student made a contribution in 8th grade for a junior high athletic, we are able to move the tax credit monies into the high school that child will be matriculating into the subsequent year.
Thank you, Ms. Betts. I just think that's important for our parents to understand that one is a payment that they make. One is really, even though they make it to us, it's going through the state, and the state restricts that, not us.
Right.
So we have to comply with state guidelines, and we know that that's a sacrifice from parents and a contribution to their students through those tax credits, and we're grateful for it. And in adhering to state law, we can't refund it, but we do want to use those funds to the best of our ability, how they so designate.
That's correct. And then again, please note the community school, the decrease of $2.3 million in community school, again, related to the pandemic and the shutdown of the VIK programs during the spring. Okay. So other budget changes. So again, instructional improvement due to accounting for current cash balance, grant fund variances due to the final fiscal year 2019 AFR, Medicaid increases again in the 19-20 school year as well as the 18-19 school year. Special Education Department has worked very, very hard at making sure that we're getting all of the claimable claims to increase our Medicaid revenue, which we have successfully done. And then all those other things I commented on. And then that's it for the revised number 2. And again, that's in the action item later for you to approve.
Board members, additional questions? We have gone through 8.01, 8.02, taking them together. Anything additional? If not, we will move on to item 9. 9.01 is, and you have had an opportunity to review all of the items on the consent agenda. So item 9.01 is approval of the consent agenda and its associated items. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphries. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ujetti. Any discussion?
Dr. Sankers, if I can just comment on one item. There is an item on here that would normally qualify for adjacent ways. Just want to point out, as we have in the past, this board has stayed true to the commitment made to voters when they passed the bonds to pay for these items through bonds rather than have a property tax that would pay for these. And we appreciate that the administration is also making efforts to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Well said. Anything else?
Dr. Santa Cruz?
Go ahead.
Just
Ms. Wick.
that we looked in the second reads, we have brought those for a first read. I don't believe it was at the last meeting, but I think it was the meeting previous.
Correct.
Just wanted to make sure that the public was aware. And then besides that, we've had it twice now at a policy meeting where we've all reviewed it and discussed it, which is also public record. So just wanted to make sure that was known.
Very good. Thank you for that. Both of those items have gone through appropriate first reads. This is on a consent agenda for a second read. And so things are as they should be relative to those two items. Any additional commentary or question? Seeing none, then we will vote on the consent agenda. All those in favor of the consent agenda as printed, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. We move to item 10, action items, items for consideration, discussion, direction, and possible approval. And we move to item 10.01, approval of performance-based compensation set forth in the employee contract between Dr. Shane McCord and the governing board as approved by the governing board and pursuant to ARS 15-34139. Dr. McCord, I would typically yield to you, but we won't on this item. Is there a motion for 10.01?
I would like to move that we approve this. I'm not going to read the whole thing since you just did, Dr. Santa Cruz. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphries. Any discussion or comment?
I just would like to comment that not just on this area, but in everything that you've done, Dr. McCord, over the last years, but especially the last 4 months, I would like to say that thank you. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for not leaving.
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti. Ms. Humphries?
I do want to point out that this is part of statute that we give Dr. McCord, or at least consider giving him performance-based compensation. And I think this has been a very unusual time in education, and unexpectedly closing our schools, but continuing to teach our students online, and all of the things that have gone into that, and all of the efforts that are going into planning and trying to figure out how to reopen our schools and be safe and take care of students and staff. And so there has been a huge amount on his plate this last few months and this last year, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphries. Anyone else? Mr. Carr?
Dr. Santa Cruz, thank you. Dr. McCord, I would echo the sentiments expressed by my fellow board members, and I think perhaps one of the best compliments that I can give about your leadership is the fact that over the last 2 or 3 months, as this crisis has occurred, I have received more calls from board members on nearby districts asking about the things that we're doing with the intention of learning from what our district has done, and that speaks very highly of your leadership, that our neighboring districts are noticing and wanting to duplicate our success. So thank you for your leadership and all you've done.
Dr. Santa Cruz, yes, just want to say thank you, especially for caring and for your positive attitude and the way that you lead with I just think with positivity and with listening to those around you, and to listening to our families and teachers, and trying to meet the needs of us that you can as we continue to go forward. So thank you.
And Dr. McCord, I echo those sentiments. Your compassion and dedication, leadership, all of those qualities that one would seek in someone at the head of the pack are embodied in you. We appreciate you. Thank you. With that, we'll take a vote on item 10.01. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0.
Can I just say something?
Okay, if you
don't
must.
mind. Not that I really. This agenda item is about me, and I wholeheartedly appreciate the vote of confidence in the wonderful worlds. But you also need to understand, and I know that you do, that I work with some extremely talented people that they need to be. I need to recognize them for everything that they do on a daily basis. And as you talked to Ms. Uggetti for the last 3 months or so, we've what we've gone through as a district, my staff here, especially my cabinet members, have shown up every single day. The efforts that have gone out by the principals and the teachers and our support staff is second to none, and I just compliment them for everything. I know that at the end of the day, I get recognized for this, but I want everyone to know that it is not me, it is them. And that's what makes this school district special, is that it's never just one person. It's a collective. It's all of you, and it's everybody else that we work with. So because we get the most wonderful thing in the world, and that's somebody else's kid. And we value that. We take pride in that, and we understand what our responsibility is. So To all of our families as well, thank you for sharing your kids with us. So we're looking forward to getting school year started next year however we can. So thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Item 10.02, FY 2021 proposed budget for adoption. Dr. McCord.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Governing board members, item 10.02 is proposed budget 2021, asking for your approval moving forward. Ms. Betson gave a fantastic presentation, so we hope your approval is set.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. And my compliments to Ms. Betts, Ms. Mattinen, and your staff for your hard work in keeping our finances steady and strong. Board members, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the proposed budget for adoption for the fiscal year 2021, right?
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Item 10.02 is before you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Item 10.03, FY 2020 revised budget number 2. Dr. McCord, any introduction?
Just request your approval, again, based off of Ms. Bett's presentation earlier. We are fortunate we had an extension be able to bring this to you this evening, which gave her more time to make sure that revised budget was tight and clean. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Motion item is before you. Motion for item 10.03.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of item 10.03, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. We're at item 11, request for future agenda items, 11.01. Anything for the good of the order this evening? If not, I would then encourage you, if there is an agenda item, to please contact Ms. Wilson and let her know your desires, and we'll move from there. Is there any item for this evening? We'll move now to item 12, Board Committee Reports. Item 12.01, Gilbert Education Foundation, Ms. Humphries?
So Gilbert Education Foundation, we had our end of the year recognition and scholarship thing the night after graduation, had a special recognition, virtual of course. We are going to be doing a board retreat that will be virtual coming up in July, and we're just looking at ways to help and support the district as we go through some very challenging times.
Thank you, Ms. Humphries. Item 12.02, City of Mesa Liaison, Ms. Wood?
I just wanted to report that I passed on our thanks to Mr. Thompson and the City of Mesa for their donation of Chromebooks for our schools in the Mesa area of GPS to help us make sure that our students have access to that as we face whatever challenges come this coming school year.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Item 12.03 and 12.04, the Town of Gilbert Liaison and the Finance and Audit Committee. Mr. Carr?
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. I did have a conversation with members of the Town of Gilbert's Town Council. They did just before this meeting. Bill Spence is the liaison here, did communicate on behalf of the council their desire to assist us in any way as we start up the school year with whatever challenges, and to please let them know if there are things that they can do. And also the desire to coordinate with our neighboring sister city in Mesa, which obviously is to them a sister city, but to us as an integral part of our district in anything that needs to be done. So just an offer of help on their behalf. Regarding the Finance Audit Committee, because of the COVID situation, we have not met.
Thank you, sir. Item 12.05, Insurance Trust. Ms. Ujetti.
We haven't met since May, so I have
Thank
nothing to
you.
report. Thank you.
Ms. Ujetti. Item 12.06, legislative issues. Those are only before you. We're waiting on some signatures and decisions from the governor and from the legislature. ASBA, I believe, is working on our behalf, our being our school district and many others, as it relates to the financing of schools during this COVID period. So that's really all I have to report in that arena. We are at item 13, future dates. Dr. McCord.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Governing board members, we have 2 meetings coming up. A special board meeting next Tuesday, June 30th at 6:30, again in this room with the appropriate measures taken. And then take a bit of a hiatus, and our next meeting after that will be Tuesday, July 28th, will be a regular board business meeting.
What,
With the caveat that you never know, we may have to have some special board meeting depending on what's going on. So if that happens, we'll make sure the community is well aware.
and
Thank you, Dr.
Sorry.
McCord. Ms. Wood?
yes, Dr. Santa Cruz. Dr. McCord, is that, we're going to begin at 6 p.m., right, on July 28th?
Did I say 6 or 6:30, or did we advertise it at 6?
I don't know. I don't remember. I'm talking about July.
Oh,
I'm talking
July,
about
July.
28th.
July.
It would be our new time.
Yes, our new time would be 6 p.m., and we'll make
that
sure
what
that
we-
we pump
Okay.
that out there to our community to make sure that they know that there's a half-hour change based on previous conversations within this board meetings.
Okay, but next week is 6:30.
Next week is
Okay.
6:30.
And I presume, even though it's a special meeting, we'll be taking public comment.
We will be.
Okay.
Board members, anything else for the good of the order? If not, I'd entertain a motion on 14.01 for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ujetti. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you, Mr. Carr. Those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you to those watching live streamed, and thank you to Dr. McCord and staff. We are adjourned. Don't leave without your signatures.